Welcome to the cockpit. My name's Ryan, and I'll be your pilot today. I am joined alongside my little co-pilot, Ren. She is freshly up from her nap, and I already scheduled this live stream, so I'm just going to make it go one way or the other. That's all right. Little daddy-daughter time. Shay is at school. Mom is doing mom things, working, things like that. We're going to go over Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers' post-season press conferences. I think they're both about 15 minutes each, give or take a little bit. Go over that. I'll get some of your thoughts in the comment section of the live chat, and we'll go through all that. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's hop on over to the first one. This is Robert Saleh's press conference. I'll pause it as we go, and I'll make comments after each question's response, I guess.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Start with questions. When you took over in 2021, you said judge us moving forward. So how would you judge your first 3 years here? Yes.
I'll leave that for you guys. There's a lot of frustration. We felt good about taking that next step this year. We've gotten better each year. Obviously, the record was the same as last year, but I guess I'll leave it to you guys.
What has to be different next year?
So that's an interesting comment right there. They ask him how would you grade yourself when you first took over the job. You said grade us moving forward, and clearly the Jets have been really bad since Robert Saleh has taken over, and they've had 2 7-win seasons back to back now, but overwhelming majority not great. So a little bit of a cop out. I'll let you guys answer that.
Beyond that, what has to be different?
Those are things we're gonna look at. We'll always attack. 23 this season. Obviously, you learn with every season. There's a lot of learning experiences that were had this year, and there's a lot of lessons that we're able to take notes on and take those notes and attack the off season so that we don't have a repeat next year of this year.
Are you planning?
Backup quarterback? Anyone? Maybe some offensive line help? Wide receiver? Sounds about right.
Oh, did I cut
No, you're good, bud.
Are you planning any staff changes?
We're going to evaluate the staff, but there's some guys that I'm sure will have opportunities elsewhere, but I'm not anticipating anything significant.
So, interesting. No significant changes. Obviously, Hackett, Olbrich, Saleh, all those guys are staying. And some other guys might find some new opportunities. Maybe Keith Carter, Todd Downing, or Rob Calabrese, someone along those lines, the same way Mike LaFleur found a new place to be last year, being the offensive coordinator for the offensive-minded head coach that calls his own plays. Basically, Nathaniel Hackett in Green Bay was what Mike LaFleur became in L.A. with the Rams, although he's getting a bunch of credit right now for turning around Stafford, so that's a little frustrating. But yes, not great.
I think the 3 coordinators are anticipating them back.
Yes.
One thing I do have to say is them keeping all their coaches and seemingly only swapping out Zach Wilson seems to really imply that this entire coaching staff and organization feels that Zach Wilson is the be-all, end-all problem to this whole season. Which is a little bonkers to think, but I do think the offensive line played a little bit better with some more defensive, more decisive quarterback play from Simeon. Maybe that's why we saw a little bit better offensive line play there at the end, but that's what it feels like to me.
Do you think you have to take, what will be your approach to the backup quarterback situation next year? You talked about lessons learned. I'm wondering if that applies to the backup quarterback.
It's going to apply to every position, but those are the discussions that Joe and I will have over the next 3 or 4 months, or whatever it is, till free agency. But we'll start this week with evaluating the roster and just going over the where we need to what the things that we need to address, the things that we have, the things that we need, and but it's definitely one of those things that we'll talk about.
Robert,
So talking about the different positions that they'll address, all that good stuff. Golden Robert, I see your comment in there. Let's throw that up on the screen real fast. Golden Robert says, did you hear Garrett blame the coaches nicely? Yeah, I saw the response. I actually, I'm pretty sure the response you're talking about is the answer you're talking about is the one that Rich Samini tweeted out. I did send out a reply to that particular response that Garrett had. And I think if we don't have success in 2024, the Jets are going to be in a very bad situation with Garrett Wilson and some of their other stars as well. But Garrett in particular, because he's got the 5th-year option. I've talked about it before. If he doesn't make a Pro Bowl, the Jets, by no fault of Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, would not be making the Pro Bowl because of our Jets' ineptitude at coaching, offense, whatever it is. And he would lose $6.6 million worth of incentives that he would get for having 2 Pro Bowls on his 5th-year option. But as far as what he said and kind of blaming coaching, I think if we don't turn it around next year, I would think Garrett Wilson will demand a trade. And I think he's going to want to go to Houston, play with C.J. Stroud. I think he's going to want to go back home to Texas. He's from Texas originally. And I think the new regime that would take over in place of Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas would utilize Garrett Wilson's peak value at that point, similar to Joe Douglas when he came in with Jamal, and try to reset the franchise by that point. And I really don't want to see that. I think Garrett Wilson's the best receiver that I've ever seen as a New York Jet, and I very much want him to be a long-term Jet. But I think that's the dangerous path we're going down. Not to mention no state income tax in Texas. I think it's going to be a little bit of a whirlwind here. I know, you're not happy with our Jets either. That's okay. Let them know how you feel. All right, let's continue.
Look at some of your major free agent signings over the last couple of years, and they weren't flawed in theory. Like they were scheme fits. They were guys who had success elsewhere. They just haven't necessarily worked out here. There have been performance issues with guys like Allen, Lakin, things like that. Do you need to change the way organizationally you and Joe collectively go into free agency because of some of the struggles you guys have had there?
No, it's a fair question. Not to be a devil or a one-up or whatever, but there's also been good. You know, DJ Reed was a good signing. Jordan Whitehead was a really good signing. A lot of the D tackles that we've had come through here have been good signings. So you're always going to take your lessons learned from the ones that don't work, right, or the ones that haven't lived up. I don't think Allen's story is written. I think he's going to have a hell of a year next year. It's just we've got to get back to work. But why things work over the other, those are things we're always studying, so that way we don't make the same mistakes twice.
So talking about the change in mindset in terms of what free agents you go after, he makes a good point. We have had some pretty decent free agents in terms of like defensive tackles. I don't know if I'd consider Jordan Whitehead a really good signing. I would say like a mid signing, probably. He's the reason we won the first game of the season for sure, but he's been a part of a lot of, maybe not so great plays, lack of wrapping up over the course of the last 2 years. I think we will try to move on from him. You mentioned DJ Reed. Obviously, I would think that's our best signing. Tyler Conklin, really good signing as well. So it's not all doom and gloom, I guess, but I mean, Blake and Tomlinson swing and a miss. Alan Lazard swing and a miss. I know he says, Alan's story is not fully written yet, but it certainly feels like he's having a little bit of buyer's remorse as well.
It's a line combination, something like that. Last year was similar. What do you guys do this offseason to try to fix the injury issues at that position?
I mentioned it a few weeks ago. There's definitely a league-wide pandemic with regards to offensive line injuries, and I've been working on this for over a month and a half in terms of just trying to find the direction that we need to go. Continue to work on it over the next few months, but that is at the forefront of my mind. It's the forefront of everybody's mind to keep those guys healthy. If the O-line's healthy, the quarterback will be healthy. If the quarterback's healthy, we'll all be healthy. And but it's definitely something that we're studying, and we'll get down hopefully get an answer for.
I would love to have an answer like 3 years ago. The Jets have been tops in injuries for like a long time. This isn't just a Robert Saleh issue, unfortunately, but hopefully they can get it figured out. I didn't realize how much of a epidemic or whatever you want to call it is for offensive line injuries across the league, but we know Cleveland had a bunch of injuries this year, and they were able to figure it out. They're in the playoffs. They're heading back to Houston. Not back to Houston, but, Watson Bowl without Watson, if you will. Got to get it figured out.
When you look at the teams that had starting Buffalo, had their starting five intact, Denver, maybe two. Are they doing the same things you're doing and other people are doing, or are they?
Those are things we're going to hopefully navigate and try to find a way in the back door to find out, right? But no, there's definitely there's a recipe out there. We've for the most part, once Joe Tittman became the center, we had some continuity along the offensive line, and I know, like I've said, it's not to be confused with good enough yet, but I do think the offense, especially in the run game, really improved over the last 5 weeks of the season, and but that comes with just continuity. Always appreciate the 5 that we have. It's just getting them out there so they can play next to each other long enough, and so yeah, we're gonna look at everything. We're gonna turn over every stone we can. Like I said, we're gonna try to go through every back door and see if we can find an answer to keep these guys on the field and keep them healthy.
So he mentions Joe Tittman and how the offensive line played better and the running game got better with Joe Tittman at center, and I would agree that's something you saw. But we also had consistency from Connor McGovern as well, so it's a little bit of maybe a knock towards him and maybe an indication that we may not try to re-sign him. I wanted to bring him back. $1.9 million, I think, is what he signed for this past year. I think it's a slam dunk backup guard center hybrid, because then you would have Tittman, McGovern, and Wes all capable of being center or guard. So maybe they're not going to go that direction. I'd love to know backup center. I see some super chats in there. Let's pop those up real quick. Justin says, not a big fan of not making certain coaching changes, such as the offensive line coach and Downing. Also, Jets need to hire new pro scouting department. Milk thumbs! That's right, boys. Hit those milk thumbs. Hit the like button. I will say this. I think not moving on from Keith Carter and Downing, I wonder if any of that might be a tip of the hand to try and get Ryan Tannehill as our backup quarterback. I feel like he's clearly not a threat to Aaron Rodgers and is stable enough and probably won't have many landing spots, given the amount of good quarterbacks coming out in the draft and potentially like free agent stuff. Like Kirk Cousins is going to be available. I think Winston's a free agent as well. Brissett, Minshew, all those guys. I agree. I think it's a miscalculation in terms of the accountability. There is none right now. Cuddy comes in, says, if you don't, the next thing the Jets don't make, if they don't, the next thing the Jets don't make the playoffs next year, this team will implode. I see a lot worse teams with better records next year. Yeah, 100%. I think you have to have success next year. If you don't have success next year, 1, everyone's out. 2, you're probably losing some of these blue chippers that we really love here to try and reset everything because of not the damage, but because of like the repercussions of going for it all right now. So maybe you have to lose Brees and you have to lose Garrett to get a new regime in here and to reset everything, because you're going to have a massive dead cap hit eventually whenever Rodgers goes. I'm really hoping that's not the case, but the panic mode in me is definitely feeling that could be where this could potentially be headed. So fingers crossed I'm wrong on this. Oh, what's wrong? What is wrong, little one? What is wrong? All right, let's burn through these. I'm going to let this play so that way we can hear some stuff.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't have the right answer for you now. We'll see how his I know I see him in the weight room. He's walking around. It looks good. But we'll see.
Robert, is there an increased sense of urgency? There's always an urgency. You always want to win Super Bowl stuff. But some of these guys that you drafted that have been performing really well, or guys you developed, they're going to have to be paid pretty soon. So do you see this as the window is not only open right now, but you really need to take advantage of it because the financial resources you may have had are going to have to be tied up to rewarding the players who perform well for you?
No, for sure. That's always the game you play in terms of hopefully we continue to draft really well. I feel like we've had a couple of good drafts since I've gotten here, and you have guys in the hopper ready to replace guys who are about to go get paid. But you're always battling. You want to take advantage when they're still on the rookie deals. But you understand eventually if they play well and you develop well, that's kind of one of the things that we talked about when we first got here. When we first got hired, our job is to make Joe D's job very, very hard in terms of developing guys the right way. Where we've got to find ways to get them under the cap and pay them. But So we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to develop people and do our best to keep people in the hopper ready to roll.
With Aaron coming off, he missed a year, given his age and the nature of his.
Give me 1 second. All right, take 2.
Injury, how does that impact your expectations for him?
My expectations for him are no different. I just watched him carve us up over the last month playing scout team. So he still has all kinds of juice, energy, arm talent. So I think he's going to come out with more fire. But my expectations for him is just to be him. He's 40 years old. He knows his process. He knows what's best for him in terms of preparation and both mentally and physically. And I think he's going to attack it with the same mindset that he had a year ago. He's on a mission, and he's not going to stop until his mission's complete.
With that said,
How important is it going to be to get some more support for Garrett in the passing game? I know there was times where he was like the only productive guy out there.
No, for sure. I thought it can come from everywhere. Brees stepped up. Thought Conklin was an awesome target. I think Rodgers is going to take another step next year. Thought Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee did a nice job as they developed. Still expecting Allen to come back and be more of a factor coming into his second year as a Jet. But obviously, you're always going to try to add the best pieces possible, but to find another threat. So teams can't just tee off and double team Garrett will be very important.
Do you see next year as a
Notice he says threat, not wide receiver.
Personally?
I always feel that way. I always feel like we need to win. It's this profession. It's results oriented. No one really cares about process or progress. It's about winning, and so for me personally, always expect to win.
at this point now, do you guys feel like you've had enough time and everything to get this team to that point where it is playoffs paralysis is where you guys make that turn and you're a perennial playoff team?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Feel like we're gonna make that turn this year. Obviously, it didn't work out the way we wanted, but I do feel like we've got a team now. There's things we got to fix. Obviously, that's what part of the lessons that we've learned in 23. But you're always expecting yourselves to put yourself in position to go make those to turn the page and take that next step.
Robert, how much did you learn even just from Aaron goes down like in the first 4 plays like as a coach? Like how much did you learn about handling that sort of adversity? Because that's make a difference.
That's a good one. Let's see. It's been trying. This has been probably one of the more trying seasons. I'm just in my career, even just watching other coaches have to deal with stuff. Not looking for a pity party or anything, but I do feel. One thing I will say is I do feel stronger about our locker room than I ever did. We battled the 4-3. Obviously, we hit that lull. I talked about it yesterday. We beat 3 playoff teams. We exercised a lot of demons this year. There's still a lot of demons we still have to exercise with playoffs and winning the division and all that good stuff. But our locker room stayed together. When it's very easy for the offense and defense to get segregated, they stuck together. They leaned on one another. I do think the offense got better towards the end of the season, especially in the run game. Brees took steps. Garrett took steps. Brownlee took steps. Xavier Gibson took steps. So the thing I learned is that we have an unbelievable locker room, an unbelievable group of characters, and if we can do things differently or whatever it is, if things can be just a little bit different, I think people really, a light will really be shined on how awesome this locker room is and things that we built around here.
I feel like that's one of like the better things of this regime is that our locker room has been better. I mean, I guess the Mike White stuff last year was kind of weird, but this year I feel like given all the adversity that happened, I'm surprised everything didn't really come out at the seams. It felt like after the New England game, there was a lot of potential for that early in the season. I don't know. I feel like a little bit more is going to have to change than just adding Aaron Rodgers back to the fold, but I guess we'll see.
With Elijah, you're talking about when he comes back for you guys. We saw him play guard. We believe he had all potential. Before he got hurt, it seemed like you guys were getting pretty close to saying, you know what, let's leave him at right tackle. Will he be the right tackle next year when he's healthy?
We'll see. Like I said, the one thing that, and I'll just say it, I'm going to tell you guys what I'm going to tell him if I get a chance to see him here in a little bit, but or I'm sure I'll call him. But we want to get him at one spot. There's a lot of reasons to believe that. Some of the injuries are because of his curses his ability to move from one spot to another, right? His versatility, and not sure if that's contributing to why he got hurt the last 2 years. Where his first year he played one position and stayed healthy the whole year. So whatever we decide, whether it's left guard, right tackle, left tackle, we want him to stay in that spot and never move through hell or high water, regardless of injury. To give him a chance to play and stay healthy for 2024.
Robert, how would you
Ooh, thank you for telling me you couldn't hear me. That's what happens when you have a little one that you're trying to mute while coach is talking. So Elijah Vera Tucker, I think his position next year on the offensive line will be dictated based on what happens in our free agency and our draft. And by that, I mean, if we get a left tackle in free agency, we don't get a right tackle in the draft, Elijah Vera Tucker's probably playing right tackle. If we get a right tackle in the draft, but we weren't able to get a left tackle in free agency, then he's probably playing left tackle. I do think the plan is for him to play tackle because of his fifth-year option, and his fifth-year option is going to be close to what an offensive tackle is getting paid, or it's going to be up there. It's going to be high. Definitely not good from a resource allocation necessarily, but the flexibility gives us a ton of flexibility.
How would you assess the job that Keith Carter did?
I think he did a really nice job. There's things that he's, like all of us, there's things that he's going to have to improve on. But, in first year of a system, to go through that many changes and to have to coach that many young men who had gotten here mid-season, I thought he did a really good job. I thought our run game, like I said, our run game got better and better. Brees in the outside zone scheme really hit strides over the last few weeks. And again, it's year one of a system with all the turnover and still being able to improve as the year went on. I thought he did a really nice job.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, so that was Robert Saleh's press conference. He talks about Keith Carter at the end there. I understand there were some pieces going in and out, and Becton didn't start day one as your left tackle, but you drafted Becton to be your left tackle. You brought in Laken Tomlinson to be your left guard. You brought in Tittman to be your center, and they finished the season, the majority of the season was played by those guys at those positions. Tittman, I don't remember when he actually came in, but he finished where he was supposed to be anyway, and we still saw not so great stuff going on. So I don't know what he's necessarily talking about. I understand the right-hand side has been beat to shit, and we had 13 different line combinations and all that good stuff. But, man, I really don't think bringing Keith Carter is really, like, the best idea considering the relationship problems he had with his offensive linemen in Tennessee. So I'm not super thrilled there. Let's hop over to Aaron Rodgers' press conference now.
Questions for Aaron?
Get your recording devices ready.
Aaron, what do you anticipate this offseason being like for you? Is there more rehab involved for you, or is it will be a normal kind of one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and finish my rehab for the next couple weeks probably, and then get back into training, and away we go.
Robert was talking about how you've been running scout team and kind of given the defense fits doing it. How challenging was it to not be able to take what you're doing there and onto the field this year once you got to the point where conceivably you could have gone out and played?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was bittersweet. It's fun to be able to go out there and practice. I think anybody that watched practice, there was excitement, and also the what if kind of hit you in the face pretty hard, because obviously if you saw what we were able to do, there's a lot of the what could have beens.
What is your message to Jets fans as we go into this offseason?
I mean, there's 31 teams that have long, troubling off seasons, and it's only one team that holds that trophy. We want to be that team. I just say, just stick with us as you will, and it's going to be a long off season for all of us. So we'll look forward to getting back here in April, or whenever we get back out, and start building the excitement like we did last year, and hopefully have a little more good fortune injury-wise.
What's it going to take?
So interesting comment there. 31 other teams have disappointment. I don't think that's true. I think it's relative to expectations going into the season. And I think when you look at teams that have had the most devastating seasons or have the maybe worst outlook going into the offseason, it's teams with those high expectations and things like that. So I don't necessarily agree with Rodgers from that standpoint. But I get what he's trying to say. Everyone's trying to win the Super Bowl. You got to win the Super Bowl.
Be that team that hosts the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, I think we needed a couple more pieces, which anybody that doesn't host at the end of the season always needs probably one or two more pieces. But we're close. There's some tough decisions about certain individuals. But I think we got a core group of guys that's really solid. I think you saw a lot of great play this year from individuals. Some guys took some steps from years 1 and 2. I think there's a lot of great cornerstone foundational pieces to build around, what you need. Great young talent, guys in their first contract, guys who just got paid, who played at a high level. We had 2 Pro Bowlers and a lot of other guys who could have been, but those are all on the defensive side of the ball. We're our 2 specialists, so we need to make sure we get some of those guys getting the recognition and playing at the Pro Bowl level, all pro level on the offensive side of the ball.
How does what happened this year?
So he talks about needing players on the offense side of the ball. You got to retool. Some tough decisions coming up with players. I think Bryce Huff is one of those. I think Mekhi Becton is probably being alluded to in part of this comment. Him and Becton, Rodgers and Becton, that is, seem to have a pretty close relationship. Obviously, Rodgers hugging Becton's mom, Becton wanting to protect his blind side, all that good stuff. I would be surprised if Becton is back here next year. The same goes for Bryce Huff. As much as I don't want to see him gone, I would be very surprised if the Jets don't try to make a move for a second-round pick to try and shore up more of the offensive side, since we've seen what happens with having just an elite defense and no offense.
Personally affect your motivation now?
Well, I always have a lot of motivation. I think the greatest competitors can motivate themselves. You can find some inspiration from other people, and that's important. But as you get older, the training is kind of a lifestyle thing. It's not, you can't take like a month off and eat whatever the hell you want and be able to just pick it back up and get back into it as you could maybe in your early 20s. So, I'll go through kind of the usual end of the season detox, fasting, and then get into my training, finish my rehab at Elite and at Proactive, and then we'll be into the off season. I'll be training the whole time.
Aaron, we didn't get a chance to see the plan of you being the starter this year with Zach as a backup learning. Is that something you'd like to see next year actually happen?
That situation,
Yeah.
I'd like to be the starter. Yeah.
The second part, though.
I love Zach, and I want what's best for Zach. And if he wants to be here, and if that's what's best for him, then obviously would love that. Love to have that relationship for another year. But I want what's best for him and where he wants to be. And sometimes a change of scenery, as I know, can be a breath of fresh air, and it's good to be able to have a new start sometimes. But I love Zach, and we'll still be connected, and we'll see what happens.
We're just talking.
So that is absolutely. If you weren't feeling like Zach definitely was reluctant to play at one point, that comment by Aaron Rodgers 100% makes you believe that there's no way Zach is coming back, and he doesn't want to be back here, and he probably checked himself out after the concussion. I don't see any way that Zach was actually concussed and stayed in the concussion protocol. Everything, when it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, sometimes it's just a duck. And it seems like Zach is definitely out.
And Robert, a few minutes ago, he said he senses that you're on a mission, perhaps even more so than last year, coming into 2024. Is that how would you characterize that?
It's hard to say, Rich. This is yesterday was our last game, and today, it's the first day of the off season, toughest day of the year, just because the relationships that you form in a locker room are never going to be that with certain people because of the nature of this business, the transient nature of guys kind of going all over the place. So that's a tough part of it. But personally, listen, I think the most important thing that I've tried to do over the years in the off season, the early part, is to refresh, kind of go away, get your mind on other things, and I have rehab to look forward to and to finish up. So that's kind of what I'll focus on. But the fire is still really strong, and it just kind of grows as we get into February, March, and April, and get back here. And I'll be looking forward to seeing what changes happen and who we add in the draft and free agency, and then kind of trying to find a way to get everybody on the same page and get the positivity going, get the goal setting going, get the manifestation going, and then get this thing where it needs to be.
You mentioned the changes. Robert was telling us there's going to be no significant ones on staff, meaning Kate's coming back, Jeff's coming back, everyone's coming back. When you were in Green Bay, there really wasn't usually much turnover. So how important is continuity to an organization, and how much better can this offense be now that everyone who is coming back has a second year with me?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need some pieces, for sure. I think we had a lot of injuries up front, so we got to shore up the offensive line. That's important. And we need, some more receiver help probably. But I like where we're at from a schematic standpoint and what I know I can do in the offense. But there's always changes. I think Nate and I will spend some time really taking a deep dive into the offense and kind of what we want to do moving forward. There's always change as part of this business.
What will be your plan regarding coming back early or whatever with OTAs? You were here like when they got you straight through. Is it a similar situation this year, or you haven't mapped that out yet?
I mean, I haven't mapped it out completely. I'm sure there'll be certain things that'll require me to be elsewhere for some of the time, but I'd like to be here as much as possible. I mean, I enjoy living out here and enjoy the things that we get to do during the off season outside of the football part, and I think the football part's important at this point for me to be around as much as I can.
What did winning the Dennisburg Most Inspirational Award mean to you?
Well, I know a little bit about Dennis because we had an old trainer who used to talk about him, who was here and then went to Green Bay. And I know his story, and it was also voted on by my teammates, so that means a lot. inspiration's important. Motivation comes from within, but inspiration can be garnered from everybody you come in contact with. So to be voted that, I was sitting up in my seat, didn't expect anything, and so I was actually got a little emotional as I was walking down and tried to kind of get down there as quickly as possible, so I wasn't, crying in front of the guys or anything. But yeah, I was touched by that award and thankful for my guys looking at me that way.
So that's really cool. The emotion of it all, having such a career-threatening injury and then coming back in historic fashion as far as like the timeline is concerned, is very impressive for Aaron Rodgers and for medical situations for athletes. From here forward, the Achilles won't be seen as a season ender necessarily, especially if it happens in training camp or anything like that. So it's something that's really cool. And as far as there were some reporters that were getting all fired up about the Jets giving Aaron Rodgers most inspirational when it's voted on by the players. Some people just want to get their nipples in a twist. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm glad that the team, feels this way about the quarterback that's going to be here at least for the next year or two. Hopefully, it all works out.
Your comment on McAfee last week actually made a lot of news. Do you want to address that any further? Do you have any regrets about what you said?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow on the show. Tune in.
Can you give us anything?
So I had a video prepared just talking about that particular instance. I was like, I don't think this is the subject matter for this particular channel. So if you were wondering my thoughts, maybe we'll get into it at some point during Talking Jets or something like that. But that was interesting.
I mean, we're here right now. Can you just...
Yeah, check me out tomorrow.
I do wish, I'm not going to lie, I like the Pat McAfee peek behind the curtain with Aaron Rodgers, but there's a lot of stuff that winds up happening on that show that I feel like bites us in the butt or creates some sort of whirlwind of energy that the New York media can just run with, and it makes it very tough to stay focused. And I think he addresses it at some point here. I saw a comment that he wants to get rid of the exterior noise, and I feel like he's been a pretty big part of some of the external noise. And then some of it is him calming it down with Zach and the backup quarterback situation. Him coming back to the team was really important. But it's definitely not one and done. Or not one and done. Definitely not. He's not at fault for some of the off-the-field stuff.
McAfee, gotta give you a raise.
Alan Lazard's had a difficult season. Just the conversations you've had with him and what gives you the confidence that he can turn it around in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's one relationship that I'm going to lean into this offseason. And, it's definitely frustrating for him. Him and I had a real good connection over the years from really his first experience on the field to him, finishing up there, being kind of our main guy. So I want to see him getting back to more of a positive mindset and feeling good about himself and his potential role in the offense. So I'm going to lean into Allen. I have a lot of love and appreciation for him, but obviously this year didn't go the way that he wanted to, or obviously, bringing him in the expectations that were there.
Aaron, after all these years and all your experience,
I feel like that's a
was
pretty
there
mature
anything about
response
this
from
that
Aaron.
You learned that was unique that you'll take forward with you?
Well, I learned a lot about what happens on the headset. I learned a lot about resilience and dealing with adversity. It was a really difficult year. It kind of hit me last night after the game. Just feeling like a lost year and that I missed out on obviously a lot of opportunity. Just thinking if I'd been out there, things would have been a little different. It's hard to go down that road, the butterfly effect road. But naturally, as humans, I think it's a part of our nature to do the what-if game and to rue things that happened and to question why it happened and how it could have avoided happening. But I'm thankful for a lot of things that happened during that time and the relationships that were formed and the people that showed up for me. And, adversity can bring out the worst or the best in you. And I'm thankful for the lessons that I learned in the process of the sadness and frustration.
You mentioned this team needing some players, Aaron. You mentioned this team needing some players. How much of a role would you like to play in helping get them here? And how do you balance familiarity with this system and with you versus maybe players that you haven't necessarily worked with before and how they could still help this team?
Yeah, I mean, as much or as little as they want. I have relationships with various people across the NFL and friends, and work out together with a lot of NFL guys. But Joe and his staff have done a nice job over the years. So if he wants my help in recruiting, I'm available. I don't necessarily think it has to be anybody associated with this system. It's just it's about character. I think we need maybe some characters on the offensive line. Some of the best lines we've ever have had some serious characters. I think about the 14 line, 5 characters on that. So I think just bringing some high character guys, if they're characters as well, that'd be fantastic. But I think we're close, which is the exciting thing.
Aaron, you said last year.
So he mentions that it doesn't necessarily have to be a scheme fit, but you need some characters on the offensive line. So I'm curious, David Bakhtiari probably going to get cut. Do they bring him in to solve the tackle solution? I know he's very vocal about MetLife's turf. In general, does he even want to come over here? Do the Jets even want him? I think Aaron saying he's going to take a step back is probably some indication that he's aware that maybe he didn't make the best decisions in terms of Dalvin Cook coming in. And if he had any influence in Alan Lazard, even though he was brought in before Aaron got here. And, maybe some of these other decisions could have gone a different way. Billy Turner clearly did not work out for the New York Jets. But I think as far as people that he's been with, Bakhtiari and Runyon at left guard are two names to at least keep an eye on. You'd want to protect yourself from a financial standpoint and from like a strong backup standpoint. So maybe AVT plays a little bit of that role. Maybe he's planning. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting that he's acknowledging that he would recruit if they asked him, but he might stay out of it if not.
That you would consider retirement
Yeah.
or a darkness retreat. Having the game taken away from you this year, has it changed your view on how long you want to play, your love of the game, anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely. I was, thinking when I got traded, it was, going to be a 1-year thing. Then I got out here, realized how much fun I was having, and kind of falling back in love with the game. And I said, I said to you guys, this is not going to be a 1-year thing. And then it gets taken away. And so this is not a 1 year in my mind. I mean, obviously, it's a what have you done for me lately? And I'm going to have to go out and prove I can still play at a high level. But I'd like this to be more than just next year.
Aaron, do you have to teach this?
So more than just next year, you're planning 2 years here with Aaron Rodgers. He said he was only thinking about 1 year heading into this season. I don't buy that for a minute. I don't buy it for a minute. I've given you guys my thoughts on that. I think he knew he was going to get traded from Green Bay. He lied and said he didn't know they were talking about trades going into the darkness retreat. When he came out, he heard about them. He knew about it, and I showed you the timestamp, and I got to find it again. But it was like back in, I think it was early February before he went into that darkness retreat, where he was like, oh, I'm hearing some interesting things. He said it on Pat McAfee. There's some interesting things going on that are some discussions that are being had without me. And like, all right. So if he's lying about that, I really think the Jets made this trade with the idea that he's going to be here 2 or 3 years, and they knew they were going to move on from Zach Wilson after this season regardless. I think they made that decision probably back in, December last year after the Jaguar game. They were probably like, hey, let's get a quarterback in here. Didn't know if it was Aaron Rodgers or not, but let's get a quarterback in here to take the reins for a year, 2, 3, whatever it may be, boost up Zach's trade value. Him sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, that's going to net us the best return we could possibly get for a sunk number 2 overall pick. So that's where I firmly believe the Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, 1 year versus multiple years thing comes in. I think they had to play it off like, oh, we're not moving off of Zach because Zach's bad. It's because Aaron's committing to us right now.
To teach this team, or you have to help teach this team how to win. I remember on Hard Knocks 1, you made a comment, we got to work on our manifestation powers, man. We're not positive enough. Is that something that this team still needs to learn about?
Yes.
How to win?
Yes.
Anything that you can add to that, or it's just gonna take
I
time?
think yes is probably the best way to answer that.
Okay.
Aaron,
You gotta learn how to win,
mentioned
boys.
before About this feeling like a lost year, does that sting a little bit more than maybe it would have, if you were 27, 28, 29, as opposed to having a finite number?
Yeah, of course. And I dealt with 2 major injuries during that time period in 13 and 17. Those were frustrating years, but I had something to look forward to. I came back in 13, we won the last game of the year, made the playoffs. In 17, I battled back and came back and was able to play against Carolina. So that felt like there was victories in that, and that I was able to get back on the field and go out there and play for my guys. And this year, that's what I was trying to do, to get back by Christmas Eve at the latest. And unfortunately, we just weren't in it to allow that to happen. But, as much as I thought after that loss we would just put me on IR and move on down the road, again, that was a decision above my pay grade, but I am thankful for that ultimately, just to be able to get back on the practice field, salvaged, I think, some of the disappointment from the season. So also, proved I maybe can still play a little bit.
Aaron, how much are you?
Hold on, Steve, 1 second. We'll go you, Rich, and then Andy, and we give you that.
You said a moment ago, Aaron, still have to prove that you play at a high level.
Right.
Do you mean prove it to yourself, or prove it to people out in the outside world who maybe, do you sense that there's some doubts out there that a 40-year-old quarterback coming off that kind of injury can be what he was a couple of years ago?
I wasn't really either of those two things, Rich. I would say it's more coming back next year and playing well is going to allow me to play another season. So obviously we're all going to be on the quote-unquote hot seat next year. It's going to be an important year for all of us, and I love that. I mean, I think that's fantastic. I mean, we should approach that every single year. It's what have you done for me lately? If you have a down year, a bad year, there's going to be people calling to move on, and especially when you're 40 years old. So I'm going to go out there and play as well as I can, and obviously if I have the season I know I'm capable of having, and we have the success I know we're capable of having, then all that stuff takes care of itself.
Steve, you good?
That was a cool way to answer that. Talking about how you need to approach every offseason as if you're on the hot seat, not just like, oh, we're building a culture and we built things the right way. It's like, no. My job's on the line every single year. I need to win as many games as possible. And I think maybe some of that winning culture isn't necessarily all about the players, but it could be people within the building as well. Like maybe there's certain things that weren't done. Maybe you didn't go out and trade for an offensive lineman, or you didn't go out and sign a backup quarterback or something along those lines. I don't know. I'm interested to see where the Jets go in this offseason and how Rodgers kind of responds to different things and how it all comes together next year.
Have you walked past the Lombardi Trophy? I know when you first got here, you talked about how lonely it was. Have you walked past it and noticed how lonely it still is?
Yeah, I have. Still sitting in the same spot by itself.
That's a dumb question.
Is that any kind of motivation for you, or added motivation?
Yeah, I mean, the motivation is a lot of stuff I've talked about. It's coming back strong from this injury. It's coming back at 40 in great shape. It's coming back and proving I can still play. It's coming back and proving that this offense works and can work. So it's all the motivation. I mean, I think we all find different ways to get ourselves in the right headspace, and that's a percentage of it. And obviously, but the first step is we haven't been in the playoffs in 13 years now, so we got to start with winning the division and taking that title away from the Bills.
Do you enjoy the fact, or relish the fact that so much is riding on you?
Yeah, that's part of playing quarterback.
But before the season, you had talked about how the young guys needed to learn from what happened at the end of 2022. What do you think, just as a team, you guys can learn from what happened this year, especially like the stuff of being in the spotlight, like these guys really hadn't been before at this level?
Anything that doesn't have anything to do with winning needs to be assessed. So anything in this building that we're doing individually or collectively that has nothing to do with real winning needs to be assessed. Everything that we do has to have a purpose too. When you step in the building, there's intentionality with everything that you do. And it's not a half the time thing, it's not a sometimes thing, it's not a most of the time thing, it's an every time thing. If you want to be a winning organization and to put yourself in position to win championships and be competitive, everything that you do matters. And the bullshit that has nothing to do with winning needs to get out of the building. So that'll be the focus moving forward. That's the focus of these conversations. I think it's important when you have an exit meetings to create an environment where there's no judgment. It's a free conversation. Guys should air out their differences. We know there'll be a percentage of that that's just bitching for no reason. That's part of it. But I think there's some things that in every organization, and we did this for 18 years in Green Bay, the exit meetings are important to just get everything on the table that's happened, flush the bullshit that you need to move forward away from, and then refine your focus moving forward.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so that was Aaron Rodgers talking about the press conference. That was a wacky way. I shouldn't say wacky, but a crazy way. Last final quote of this press conference was, we got to get the bullshit out. All the stuff that doesn't go towards winning needs to get out. And when he first started saying it, it felt more like just a statement of fact, like any team has to get rid of things that aren't going to move you closer to a winning culture and a, more consistent winning, all that good stuff. But then as he got towards the end of it, I got the sense that he was definitely having a feeling about someone or a few people within the organization. I think we saw a bunch of leaks this year that we don't normally see. I think Boyle was probably one of those leaks, if I had to guess. But then I don't know. I mean, maybe it's Zach. Maybe there's some people behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see. Is it players? I don't know. It's really frustrating to hear that everyone's not moving in the same direction. Because as a fan, you're paying hard-earned dollars that you work for, and then you go to a game expecting everyone to put in the effort you want them to put in. And some guys later in the season maybe don't feel the same way, especially once the winning goes out the window. So I'm curious to see how this winds up playing out throughout the offseason. Does Aaron Rodgers actually, filter out the bullshit? Or are we going to have something, I don't know, maybe a little less glamorous next year? I don't know. We got to be able to figure it out. You got to figure it out. You got to have everyone moving in the right direction. And hopefully we can clear out the people that are not moving in that direction. I think once you see the transaction wire, whether it's via trade or players cut or players maybe going, allowed to walk in free agency, that will be very telling as to who he might have been talking about. Now, I do want to address a comment in the live chat. Alan, I did see your comment in there before. I did really like I think it was you, that said, should the Jets trade Bryce Huff and the number 10 pick to move up to number 5 with the Chargers? They are probably going to lose Khalil Mack, most likely. So that could be a very enticing offer for the New York Jets. Because if you're going to wind up losing Bryce Huff, if you could turn Bryce Huff into a stud tackle, wow. Dude, I would jump for joy. That would absolutely reclaim all the faith I have in, the way they handled Huff, I guess. I still don't love the McDonald pick this past year. And honestly, if we just lost the Commanders game, we would have wound up with the top 6 pick, and we probably would have had an offensive tackle anyway, and you save some of your assets. I don't want to see Bryce Huff go, but if he's gonna go, turning him into a franchise left tackle for the next 10 years, the same way we did with John Abraham with, the center position with Nick Mangold. John Abraham was traded. I would sign up for that every damn day. And it's not me saying I want to see Huff go at all, but if you had to lose him in some capacity, that's probably the best way to do it. So, guys, let me know what you think of Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh's postseason press conferences. I'd imagine we'll hear from Joe Douglas in the coming days, I would think. I don't know when his is actually scheduled. I didn't see it scheduled on the Jets YouTube page. So if you guys hear about it, let me know, because that's the one I really want to hear. He's kind of been shielding himself since the bye week or the trade deadline or whatever it was, and he hasn't had to answer any tough questions, and it's really been Robert Saleh taking all the press bullets from all like the sharp questions and everything that have been asked And it's really Joe Douglas that has to answer for a lot of the things that have gone wrong. So, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.